welcome to Impact 2026, our continuing conversation where we have conversations about all different types of topics from current events, race, religion, everything that you can think of. And we do it from a religious standpoint. This is that open opportunity where you can participate. You can have a conversation. We can discuss these issues. And you can be a part of that by typing your comments and your questions into the comment section. So whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, whatever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever it is out there, go ahead and just type your comments in. We will address them. You don't always just want to listen to people. Sometimes you need to put in your 2 cents. You need to add your questions and your perspective, your point of view. And so we invite you to do that. As always, I like to remind people of the other offerings that we have here. So on Thursdays, we have Thursday Thirst, which is a weekly Bible study. That is at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And that's on Facebook and YouTube. You're able to join in and have an in-depth discussion about the Bible. On Sundays, we have worship service at 10 o'clock. That is Eastern Standard Time as well. It is on Facebook, YouTube, and in person. If you look at the address that's on your screen, feel free to join us if you are in the Highland Springs, Virginia area, the Richmond, Virginia area. And on Tuesdays, today, at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we have a time of prayer. That is when the people of this ministry get together and we all pray at the same time. We're not doing it on a call. We're not all getting together, but everyone is praying. And so if you want to join us in prayer, because there's power in prayer, please feel free at sometime between 7 and 7:45 to offer up a word of prayer. And of course, where you are now, we have Impact 2026. All right. I haven't been here in a little bit. Life gets in the way. You get busy. You're doing stuff. And conflicts. But I am back here today. And I appreciate the fact that we're still able to do this and have conversations and getting my schedule under control. So we're just going to hop right into what the topic is today. And since last time, unfortunately, some things have happened that we were all warned about from our parents, and our grandparents, and our aunts and uncles and people who said, if you do not learn from your history, you're bound to repeat it. And I know as a young person, I rolled my eyes a little bit when I heard that. If you don't, you're not going to your history and learning from your history, you're going to repeat it. And I'm like, man, history is not about to repeat itself. We're not about to go back to the old times, old days. Well, I was wrong, and they were right. If you have not been watching, basically, the Voting Rights Act, the major legislation that allowed for many Black people and people of color to have the ability to actually participate in the legislative process. The Voting Rights Act, which stopped a lot of states, southern states especially, from being able to discriminate against people of color. And the Voting Rights Act, which allowed for most of the states who were trying to use deceptive, racially charged practices that they had to follow certain rules and guidelines. The Voting Rights Act was basically destroyed by the Supreme Court. And as a result, a lot of states have decided to redo their districts. And so just a little bit more explanation, the different districts that people represent for the House of Representatives, they're redoing the districts, gerrymandering them or whatever you call them. Race can no longer be a factor in determining districts. Now, why is it important? And just real quick before we get to the conversation. It's important because if you have states where the majority of people are, let's say, white, and the other states where the majority of people are white, they can make districts where all of the districts, all the representatives, all of the representation from that state that goes to the United States House of Representatives, all of those people will be of one party and most likely be of one color. And so you can dilute the voice of people of color. You can dilute the voice of any kind of different racial groups or groups that you have. You can dilute the voice so that you only have what you want to have being representative of your state. So, for example, in a place like Tennessee, where they had a couple of districts that are represented by Black legislators, they are redoing the lines and redoing the districts so that they can get legislators who are going to be Republican or going to be and to just keep it plain, be white. And so the black voice in Tennessee is being eliminated. They're trying to eliminate any majority black districts. So that's where we are today. That's where we have come to today. One of the most consequential ones is in South Carolina, where they have Representative Clyburn, who is the sole black representative of South Carolina, and they are redoing his district to make sure that they don't have a majority black district anymore, and he will most likely lose his seat because his district will cease to exist. His district, which includes historically black colleges, his district that includes 2 major cities in South Carolina, his district that includes just a lot of places where, black representation. And so, why is this important? Why are we talking about it? Well, for so long, we used to have voting as a pillar of our conversation, So it's a major part of our conversation. We would talk about it in church. We would talk about it in our schools. We would talk about it in our families. Like, you have to vote. It's a responsibility to vote. Polling places were even at our churches. And over the years, we've been a little less politically active in the sense of telling people to vote. You need to vote. You need to have your rights and everything like that. You hear people, and especially in my age group and younger, you hear people who are disenfranchised who say voting doesn't matter. And we've talked about it here plenty of times. But now it's the result is happening where we haven't been using our vote. We haven't been talking about our ability to vote. I'm talking about black people and I'm talking about women. And now those rights are being stripped away. Now your voice is less effective, even though you still should vote. As a black person, in a lot of the places, your vote is being diluted. And so that there is no black representation, and they're looking to minimize black representation in the United States government or as elected officials, the House of Representatives. We're going to significantly reduce the black representation. And so it comes to the point of, what do we do now as people of color? Or if you're not a person of color, as people who are in the church, what do we do now? We've lost some of our power and our juice when it comes to voting, because again, there's no legal requirement to make sure that black people have a voice. How do we continue and push and make sure that we have a voice? And what do we do as far as the church goes? I think the first part is, it's what we've always done, but I think it's more important now, and I think it needs to be different now, is one of the things we've always had a conversation about voting. But I think it needs to be a little bit more just direct. It doesn't have to be forceful, but just direct and intentional. Parents, it is your job. I don't care if you have 18-year-olds who are just starting to vote, or you have 40-year-olds, or I don't care if you have 60-year-olds, you're in your 80s or 90s. You need to ask them if they voted and let them know that there's an expectation that you should vote. I know you can't force anybody to do anything. You're not forcing adults to do anything, but there needs to be an expectation and an understanding that this is important and this is what we should be doing. And if you don't vote, it's not the end of the world. It'll just be like, I'm really disappointed. I really think you've let us down. Because I think that what has happened with us and one another is that we love to respect everybody's decisions, which is a good thing. You want to respect everybody's decisions. And as a society or as a culture or as a group of people, we always want to say, well, you don't want to be judgmental. They let them do their thing, whatever. That sounds nice, but I do think that there needs to be expectations. You can let people know that I don't agree and I'm disappointed because what you're doing is affecting not only you, but all of us. And so as black people, as people of color, as people in the church, we need to not necessarily hold each other accountable. I would say that, but not necessarily hold each other accountable. But I do think that we have to have conversations and let people know how we feel about the decisions that they make. It's not going to change, I'm not telling you not to be friends with somebody or get into a fist fight or a big arguing and shouting match, but let them know, like, I don't agree with that, and I think you're really hurting us. You're hurting us. So I think that's the first part. We just need to continue to have those conversations with our family and our friends, and as parents, relatives, we need to imply that there's an expectation that that's what we do, and that's what we should be doing. And so, let's not always just let people live and do their thing. Let's let people live and do their thing and remind them of the responsibilities that they have. Remind them of the people who came before them and what we, I will say, owe it back. People sacrifice their lives. People sacrifice opportunities. People sacrifice a lot of things for us to have these opportunities. So we kind of owe it back to not waste their sacrifices. And so I think that's a conversation and a reminder that we need to have. Now, as far as the church, there's been a big thing about separation of church and state, and I don't know how people feel about politics in the church. But regardless of politics in the church, I do think that there needs to be a understanding and an expectation in churches that voting is something that we do. Participating in the society around us is something that we do. There is this set aside of the thought process that I think some people have sometimes in the churches. All right, we're the church. We're our own separate community. We are not of this world. We're here right now, but we're concentrating on bigger and better things and understanding, which I get. But you do participate in this world. And that's why constantly in the Bible, and correct me if I'm wrong, but constantly in the Bible, it talks about our relationships with one another and other people. At the end of the day, there would be no point for Jesus to come here if what's going on in the world didn't matter. He wouldn't have to feed people. He wouldn't have blessed people and healed people if it didn't matter. He'd just be like, well, just, you're not of this world. Wait till the next time. But that's not what happened, and that's not what occurred. Even though we're focusing on God and we're focusing on the afterlife and we're focusing on what we need to be doing, we also need to be focusing on one another and focusing on things that are going on here. And so when people, when you hear people say, well, I'm not really focused on what's going on around in the world and blah, 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 you're not inviting other people to come join us. We're not being a light and an opportunity for other people to get closer to God because we're not focusing on them. It's real selfish. We're focusing on ourselves and our own journey, but we haven't focused in on other people. And the only way to focus in on them is to get involved in the items of the world. So if people are hungry, and their hunger is what is blocking them from being able to focus in on some other things, God, the church, community, participating in their hunger and helping them to get fed will then help them to get spiritually fed. And so I think that set aside notion of, we're really not a part of this world and we don't really have responsibilities to what's going on in this world or in our day-to-day things. I think that is a notion that we probably need to eliminate because I don't think that that's good for us. Also, we need to talk about, just let's keep it plain. If we're talking about what's going on in the world or how we can be Christians, we have to talk about how we can be Christians in this world and what's going on in the world, and we have to participate. And that does get political. And so those conversations shouldn't be shied away from, I think, inside of the church. And I know we don't have polling places as much in the church anymore, but what we do need to do is have those conversations. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having those conversations, but the least the conversations can be, you need to vote. Why do you need to vote? There's a history of why we need to vote. And people take away our voting. People have worked so hard to take away our rights to vote and have succeeded. And so we need to work twice as hard to get our rights of representation back. All right. Also, and I think this one for me is kind of the way I lean towards it. When you hear somebody talk about talk about voting and why voting isn't important, or talk about voting and saying that it doesn't matter. When you hear somebody doing that, I think the number one thing is, for me, is to then turn to them and say, well, then you have no complaints. Don't want to hear you complaining about anything. Anything. I don't want to hear you complaining about the street not looking right or potholes. I don't want to hear you complaining about crime. I don't want to hear you complain about young people are doing this and now I don't have an opportunity to go to the park. You don't need to complain about anything. Life for you just needs to be a passenger in this ride because if you don't have a voice when it's time to talk, then when things go wrong, you don't have a voice as well. And so we got to remind people, I think, that your time to talk is your vote. Your time, there's no point in complaining and fussing about things because when you have an opportunity to change things or make a difference or try to put people in place that you want to have in place, if you don't vote and you don't participate, you don't have anything there. You're not putting in any other work. And so I think it's a constant battle that we have to have to be able to make sure that people understand the importance of voting. Now, let me tell you what's going on. NAACP has decided. I don't really know about this one. I can't really participate in this, but they're telling people if you are a person of color or you are sympathetic with the NAACP, then do not go to do not go to college sporting events in the South. Kind of hit them where it hurts in the pockets. So these southern states, they love their football. I know I'm kind of making a generalization, but a lot of southern states love football. And so what the NAACP has said is don't go to some of these major colleges in the South. Don't go take trips down and spend your money at these states that have decided that we're going to eliminate all of the black districts and the black voting power. Then don't spend your money in those states when it comes to these sport events. Now that doesn't do anything for me because I'm not about to go drive down to no southern states to go watch a football game anyway. But if you're one of those people, I implore you to give it to the NAACP. Now, what I am waiting for is to see what the NAACP says. I'll give a personal story and then we have a comment. This summer, I'm actually supposed to go to Tennessee. And Tennessee is one of the places that has decided that they want to eliminate the majority black districts. They want to go and they want to slice up Memphis so that black people cannot have a majority vote. And so I'm supposed to go with some family. And so me by myself sitting back and saying, well, especially if the NAACP says it, but I'm mulling it over now. Look, I'm not going to Tennessee. They can't get my money. Those type of activities, which I consider racist, you're not getting my money. Now, me by myself, that doesn't mean a lot. You're like, well, what's the point of doing that? They don't care nothing about your $100 or a couple $100 that you might spend on a little quick vacation down in Tennessee. And you're true, that's right. But maybe the fact that I said no, I'm not going, or I can't go because of this. And then people ask me, well, why you can't go? And I'm going with, let's say, about 20 people. Now 20 people know why I've chosen not to go and why I think what Tennessee has done wrong. And maybe those 20 people also know some other folk, and they'll say, yeah, we were going on this trip, but I got my friend here or family or my cousin or my whatever. He's not going because he feels like this situation was bad and this situation is racist. And maybe, just maybe, my little I'm not going will affect 20, and then maybe through other conversations, maybe 30 people. And it may not be a lot, but it may be just a little bit more to let people know. To some folk who weren't paying attention, Tennessee is not doing what they're supposed to do. And it's not just Tennessee, South Carolina, Louisiana. They starting to pile up. And so I think that little sacrifice, for me, makes sense. But if enough people did their little sacrifices, maybe some attention will be paid and some changes will be made. Let's not forget what we just did. Now, we don't have to go back in the past, but let's not forget what we just did when it came to Target. Target has still not recovered from the boycott of Target because they decided to knock down some of their DEI programs and renege on some of the promises that they made towards people of color. Comment. We have not lost some of our power. We have lost all of our power in regards to society and its norms. As Christians, our trust should never be in society. Society will sin, particularly for its own purpose, its own gain. As Christians, we must realize that only God can deal with sin, with injustice. This may be a time when we need to wait upon the Lord. Let the Lord fight the battle. Interesting. I do agree, and then I'll say I'll push back a little bit. We have lost our power, and reality of the matter is most of the stuff that we're going to, people can do. Like I'll talk about the boycott. If they're boycotting the games, or if they decide to boycott, certain states. If I decide to personally boycott Tennessee, it's not a lot that can be done. But I do think we can wait upon the Lord and be actively loud while waiting. And so, yes, I may not have any juice or any power, but you're going to hear my mouth. You're going to hear me complain. You're not going to just sit back and think things are sweet. I'm going to make it a little bit uncomfortable for you, or try to make it a little bit uncomfortable for you while you do what you're doing. And so I'm not going to sit here and be quiet or sit back and be like, just sit back and take it, as they say. You're not going to have no kind of illusion that you've done what you've done and I like it, or you've done what you've done and you beat me silent. Like that's my position of how I do it. So I 100% agree that maybe it is, that there is consideration that we don't have the power, and so we need somebody or something with more power, and that's God has the power in this situation, and God can bring us to wherever we need to be. And while God is doing that, kicking, screaming, yelling, whatever, to let people know, I am not okay with how y'all acting. You are not right, and what you're doing is wrong. And so, yes, we may not need to fight the battle. I don't think necessarily. Then we may, like I said, boycotts are an active thing. But I think we have lost our power, and we have to rely on God, and we can't try to take it up ourselves and think that we're going to be able to take it all back. I think we have to rely on God, and we go in kicking and screaming. Another comment: the NAACP is looking for some response. However, the response of Christians, the church, is prayer. Don't forget, prayer is talking to God, but also listening to God. The Lord will tell us what needs to be done. Yes. Yeah, I think that's probably the one place where the NAACP and some other organizations kind of distance themselves from what we need to be doing as Christians. You're right. The first thing we need to do is pray and then listen. We don't need to just be going out doing stuff, because I think that's what the NAACP is doing right now. Saying don't go to football games in the South, you're just going out doing stuff. That's not. I don't know. Maybe they got some secret sauce there, but I don't think that's an effective plan or a good idea. I think that maybe you take a little moment, you pray, and listen to what God has to say and what direction it is. And so if that direction is we need to do some stuff, then let's do it. If that direction is sit back and let me handle this, then let's do it. If it's whatever it may be. But I do think that that's exactly what's being said here. I think the NAACP is an example of just going out here, just trying to do some stuff. And let's see what God has to do in this situation. Let's sit back and let's follow directions. Let's listen to what's right. And what's right is not always to do something. Because it may be to just sit back and let this whole thing fall on its own head. But I regard it, and it still goes back to the same thing. And even with that, Um, let's still be vocal about it. Let's make sure people know our dissatisfaction. Um, yeah, I don't have to be silent. But yeah, I think that that's right. We need to pray. We need to be actively praying about what is going on, and Lord, what do you want us to do in this situation? What is our move? Uh, I think that's a great comment. That really kind of goes to where we are. Lord, fight our battles. But I think communication has to be one of the keys that we have to do. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about this. Let's not just let things happen and slide and go under the table, and we just kind of like, all right, we can't do nothing. Every little bit that we do, when it comes to communicating and talking with one another, gets us closer to, an understanding of what needs to happen, and especially to these younger folk, to these children, to these just young adults. Um, they need to understand what's going on. They need to understand what they've lost, what we've lost. They need to understand what is going on, even if there's nothing that we can do right now. There's no change that we can make, and we are slowly going into a worse and worse and worse situation. They need to understand what this worse situation is. They need to understand what's going on. We have to stop shielding people from the reality. Um, and as I've always said, let's keep it plain. Don't sit here and try to sugarcoat it. Well, they're just trying to, make their districts so, you got the Republicans and you got the Democrats. The Republicans are just trying to gerrymander so that they can have us. No, they are eliminating black districts. They are eliminating districts that have, that gives a person in our government the voice that was elected by black people. And so basically, they're trying to get rid of our voice, dilute our voice. They want to have the House of Representatives and no representatives be people of color. In some states where you're having 27%, 30%, 40% of the population being people of color, but yet none of the representation that's going to be in the United States government from those states are going to be people of color. So 30% of the population has no representation, which means when they make laws, they won't be considering what we need. They can tell us what we need and tell us what we want, but they'll never even hear it from us. And they don't have to hear it from us because we won't have the voting power to do anything about it. Why listen to the black constituents that you have when at the end of the day, no matter how they vote, it won't change whether you get reelected or not? And that's what they're looking to do. Not only do we have generations now who do not find value in voting, they also do not find value in listening to God. And here we are. And that's how we got here. That's how we got here. We got here because, two things. We got here because parents stopped making their children go to church. And then we got here because children stopped going to church when they became adults. And so we kind of slid down this bad path. And so yeah, they've stopped being active when it comes to voting, and they've stopped being active when it comes to church. And when it comes to us as people of color. So if anybody who's listening is not a person of color, this is not really for you, but we lost our power. We had power in the church, and we gave that away. And now we had power when it came to the government and the legislative process, and now we've given that away. So if we had kept the power from the church, then we probably still have power in this situation, but we've given away all our power. And I don't know how much more we got to give away, but I'm pretty sure we're going to do that the next spot too. And so I think the first steps is to regaining all our power is one, let's get our butts back in the church, get our butts back into different organizations, get ourselves back together. And that'll bring opportunity back. One thing is factual. Sports carry symbolic power in America, far beyond the game itself. When athletes or institutions move collectively, people pay attention. And that's a good point. I think that may be what NAACP is looking to do. Because sports is so important to people, maybe that's what they're trying to do is say, all right, this is going to be symbolic. At the end of the day, we look at, everybody knows Colin Kaepernick's name because he decided to take a knee during NFL games, and so it morphed into a broader conversation where even the president was talking about it and everything like that. And so maybe that's the gamble and the bet that they're making, that sports does have a lot of power, and that maybe if people of color and people who support people of color decide to stop going to the college games down in the South, that the symbolism will turn into a broader conversation. And maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. I don't see it, but again, I'm not one of those people who actually go down to the game, so I can't help out. I can't stop going to something I never went to in the first place. So for me and a lot of people like me, we're not going to have the opportunity to participate in this particular boycott. But I think you're right. I think that may be what it is. It's a lot of symbolism, and it may be something that's powerful. If they start talking about it on the ESPN, and then they start talking about it on CNN and other sports network, and then the news networks, and maybe they'll get something rolling. So maybe maybe you're right. That's where they're looking to go. All right, we hit our time. Unfortunately, this is just a bad spot that we're in as people of color. It's a bad spot that we're in, women, because they're coming for women. It's a bad spot that we're in just as a country in the whole. Everyone should have some representation. Things are better when you have, different sides. When you have different people bringing in thoughts and ideas, you're able to cover more. You're able to understand more. It's not good when you have just the same people trying to run everything. Even in a household, I look at my house. My wife is the fun person, and I'm more of the tight on the money, businessy person. If you put that two together, then you can have some fun and you can be responsible with your money. If it was just me, be responsible with the money, we wouldn't have no fun. If it was just my wife, we'd just be all fun, not responsible with the money. But together, we work it out. And so I think that's the way things need to be. You need to have different folk representing us in this country because it just makes things better. And stop being racist. All right, with that, just remind people again about our offerings on Thursday. We have Thursday Thirst, our weekly Bible study. That's at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time right here on Facebook and YouTube. On Sundays, we have a time of worship at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please join us. And it's also in person if you the address on the screen. And then on Tuesdays at 7 to 7:45, our time of prayer. And of course, where you are now, Impact 2026. Please join us again. Thank you for all the questions and the comments. And then join us again. Have a good one.